Welcome to another episode of In the Weeds with Emily Schmidt. I'm ramped because I'm sitting in a huge patch of ramps, or ramsons as they're known in the Midwest.
There are actually two varieties of plants that are both known as ramps. This variety is more common in the Northeast and has reddish-pink leaf stems and can be generally larger with wider leaves. This other variety has whitish-green leaf stems and is considerably smaller with more narrow leaves.
Harvested a few here with gigantic bulbs. If you want to ethically harvest ramps, you want to harvest about 1/10 of what you see, or not even 1/10 of what you see.
Collecting ramps is controversial, and you should only do so when abundant. Even so, check regulations in your area first. All ramps must be foraged ethically and sustainably. Pay attention to the color of your ramps. The variety with reddish-pink stems is considered a species of special concern in some states. And the other variety, with whitish-green stems, is rare enough to be protected in some areas. However, laws can change, so research foraging laws in your area first. Harvest sparingly. The leaves have the same flavor as the bulbs, but it won't kill the plant to collect some leaves. Remember, collecting bulbs will kill the plant.
You can harvest the greens every other leaf. The greens are as edible as the bulbs and have the same desirable oniony flavor. They're also called Wild Leeks, and they can be used in any similar preparation for anything you use onions or scallions or leeks for. And they're fantastic. Let's dig one up. You got a nice one here. This one has 3 leaves. Pretty incredible. Usually they're in pretty loose soil, and you can just kind of get them out with your hands. But you want to be careful not to break the bulb. Wow. Okay. Look at that sucker. Ramps. Known by their oniony smell when you crush any part of the plant. It gives off that smell like a wild leek. They're fantastic. You can't eat them raw, but they're give you bad breath. But they're fantastic. Ramps. Only they bulbs from large patches. If you find a small patch, just harvest every other leaf. The leaves have the same exact flavor as the bulb, and the plants can continue to regenerate.
Ramps have more than one poisonous lookalike. First, let's look at a plant that is more obviously different from ramps. These leaves really don't resemble ramp leaves. You'll notice the veins are not parallel. This is skunk cabbage, which has a pungent smell, but unpleasant, more like skunk than onions, so it's obviously not ramps. Skunk cabbage contains toxins, and I don't want anyone to mistakenly eat this very common spring plant. Now it's time to introduce the more serious lookalikes for ramps. It is crucial to note that not only are there other plants that resemble ramps, but some of these lookalikes are potentially deadly. There are dangerous plants that you must be aware of if you are interested in gathering ramps. So let's get to know them. First, I want to begin by showing you a picture of ramp shoots that I captured earlier in the spring on April 7th. Next, I want to show you a picture of the shoots of poisonous lily of the valley growing nearby. Very similar. As the leaves of lily of the valley mature, they resemble ramps even more. This patch of lily of the valley plants here truly do look like ramps. Until the lily of the valley develops its conspicuous flowers, The two different species can be difficult to tell apart. So how can you? Let's take a look at them side by side. Here, we can see a small lily-of-the-valley plant on the left, compared to the larger ramp on the right side of the photograph. This ramp happens to be larger, but that's just because it's more fully grown, and size is not how you tell them apart. But you may notice a difference in the root system. Lily of the Valley grows from a multitude of thin, stringy rhizomes, which grow out in all directions, and ramps grow from bulbs. However, sometimes ramp bulbs can be small and slender, and besides, if you're collecting only leaves, you wouldn't notice the difference in the root system anyway. Since the leaves are so similar, how else can you tell these two plants apart? The obvious difference is the aroma of the plant. When torn or broken, Lily of the Valley leaves are odorless, whereas ramps smell strongly of onion and garlic. Be warned, if you are picking ramps, your hands will also smell of onion and garlic, which may prove detecting odorless plants more difficult. Luckily, there is another difference that pertains to the leaves. The leaves of Lily of the Valley emerge from one central stem, with multiple leaves whorled around the center. Ramp leaves emerge singly, each on its own leaf stem, attached to a bulb underground. Unfortunately, Lily of the Valley is not the only potentially deadly lookalike for ramps. Another lookalike to beware of is false hellebore. This is a patch of false hellebore, a poisonous plant that some people mistake for ramps. These look much more like ramps when they're first growing. Parallel veins fool a lot of people, and it can be seriously poisonous. Although false hellebore has those parallel veins, the leaves are deeply pleated, even as shoots, in a way that ramp leaves are not. And the veins are more widely spaced than the very close parallel veins on ramps. Another difference is that the leaves of false hellebore grow spirally arranged around a central stem of the same color. Ramp leaves, on the other hand, grow singly, each attached to its own leaf stem that may be whitish-green or reddish-pink. Here are some lovely ramps. Growing right underneath the toxic lookalike false hellebore. It is not uncommon for these two plants to share habitat, so be sure to note all of the differences. Notice how smooth the ramp leaves are in comparison to the deeply pleated leaves of false hellebore. Another important difference is the odor of the plant. False hellebore does not smell of onion when torn or broken, but ramps do. Another major difference between the two is the root system. False hellebore grows from rhizomes, and ramps grow from a bulb. You will find other plants that are ramp lookalikes. After all, many plants look like green leaves coming up from the ground, especially when they are just young shoots. Imagine you just found these. Looks like ramps. But then you notice this fringe of hairs along the leaf edge. What does this mean? Well, it means something looks different, and it's time to recall the number one rule of foraging: when in doubt, throw it out. Look closer. You'll notice it lacks a bulb, too, and it also lacks the oniony smell. By now, you're certain these are not ramps. In foraging, you don't have to identify everything you see, but you do have to recognize when something is not the species you're looking for. These are ramps. It's a combination of the season, early spring, the key features, and the oniony smell. Remember, it is never one characteristic alone that defines your plant. It is a combination of key features. Now that we have discussed lookalikes, it's time to take our ramps into the kitchen, where I will show you how to use the leaves in two ways: flavorful ramp butter and a spicy ramp pesto. Hello and welcome into Emily's Country Kitchen. Today we're working with ramp greens, and I'm going to show you how to turn them into delectable ramp butter using only 2 or 3 ingredients. You need your ramp greens, You need some softened butter and optionally some salt. If you're not using salted butter, you might want to ramp up the flavor with a little bit of salt. So let's go ahead and show you how to slice the leaves. What we're going to do is lie them down flat, stacking on top of one another. And then we're going to roll this into a tight cigar-like shape. And this is called making a chiffonade, when you roll it up tight and cut it into little fine ribbons. You can mince them finer if you prefer, but it's nice to add a little bit of texture to your butter. So I like cutting them into these ribbons. And that's all you really need to do. Cut them into the ribbons, separate them nicely, and add them to your softened butter. But first I'm going to cut up the rest of the greens. So now we have our ramps all sliced up in this lovely chiffonade cut, ready to be incorporated into the butter, which I've already softened. So I've got 2 sticks of butter here, so I'm using roughly 2 cups of ramp greens, and we'll see if this works out. Just go ahead and mash it up. It's the fun part, incorporating all that oniony flavor into the butter. Now I'm going to just taste a little bit of it, see if I think it needs more salt. I've got kind of a salty palate. Oh, that's going to be good when it's done. It's good now. But I'm going to add like a little bit more salt. Really make the flavors sing. Get you try this. Now that our ramps are fully incorporated into the softened butter, I'm going to try a technique to preserve them that I've never done before, so I hope it works out. All you need is a sheet of plastic wrap and your ramp butter, and we're going to try to make a little cylinder out of the butter, so that way you can soften it and slice it into a little coin to top a steak or something. I'm just going to try to shape this into somewhat of a cylinder. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to do this. I've only seen it done. Looks pretty cylindrical to me. I'm going to go quit while I'm ahead. And pinch the edges off. Make it like a big piece of candy. And this is ready to go in a freezer bag and pop into the freezer, where it will last for months. But good luck making it last that long. Hello and welcome back to Emily's Country Kitchen, where I'm showing you what you can do with abundant ramp greens that you might have, or if you might be lucky enough to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a ramp pesto out of them. This is something I've never done before, but I can't see how it could be bad. We're just going to roughly chop the ramp leaves into these nice little ribbons, so that way we can incorporate them in with our pine nuts a little more easily. You're going to want to use about a cup of your ramp greens. This is just a basic pesto recipe that I've adapted. And I'm going to cut in half. So what we're using is a half a cup of pine nuts and a cup of ramps going right into the food processor. Now I went ahead and toasted my pine nuts because I've read if you're not toasting your nuts and seeds, then you're basically wasting your time, not getting maximum depth of flavor out of your product. So it's a great thing to do. And we're just going to replace the lid and pulse this gently until it's chopped lightly and combine. So then we're going to appreciate the aroma for a second there, and then add a thin stream of olive oil into it while it's running. Using about a half a cup of olive oil. All right, it may look kind of soupy at this point, but that's fine because you're going to add plenty of cheese. I think I cut this recipe in half, so I'm using about a half a cup of cheese plus a half a quarter cup of cheese. It's a little complicated, but that's as much cheese and salt and pepper you want to add into your mix. Big dose of salt, liberal grinding of pepper, and add all your cheese in. Pulse this a few more times so the cheese is fully incorporated into the mixture. And there you have it. I'm going to unplug this before I put my fingers in it. I can't wait to eat this on pasta as soon as possible. Make baked stuffed shells with it. Layered in between lasagna. So many uses. So, ramp pesto, everyone.